So I'd like to introduce Emil Abirascid, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with the pronunciation of the last name.
No, it's okay.
Abirascid. See, it's a problem. I'm Italian by background, but
Well, it's an Arabic name. So.
I know, but so Emil's the moderator for the panel, and then we have Bianca Cefalo from Space Dots, Emma Gatti, and Alessandro Panerai. So please take the stage.
Okay, thank you and welcome, and thanks for having me, and good evening, good afternoon actually also from my side. My name is Emil Abirascid. I'm actually a journalist. I run a magazine called startupbusiness.it that since 2008 tells about all the innovation in Italy and in Europe, and you can read both in Italian and English. So join my reader community. Will be an honor for me, as is an honor to be with all those speakers here, and we go at warp speed in the outer space, starting to the minority part of this panel. So Alessandro, please, you are an investor, and you are very you have a very unique approach to investments in those kind of technologies, space tech specifically in this case. So I want to start with you to share with us, if you can share with us, which are the most interesting things you are meeting and you are seeing in order to transform them in something that creates value.
Sure, no, thank you, Emil. Look, I come from a newcomer perspective, let's say, when it comes to space, in the sense that, like, I'm not in itself a space expert, but it happens that I work for a space company as well since January as the head of capital markets. No? So that's why I'm here. Building on the previous panel, actually, I think the first question is always about how do you make money, you know, when it comes to these kind of companies. And normally here, it's where you see that basically this is an industry that needs to get invented from scratch, in a sense, since the last wave of the space economy you saw in the previous decades. No? So that's why we speak about new space economy. And normally that's also where you lose about 90% of the companies, because it's not crystal clear how do they make money. As well, it's not normally crystal clear how do I make money, no? Which is normally the second question I ask in these kind of situations. Because, of course, at the same time, the exit strategy of those companies is still to be defined in one sense. No? So you see now a wave of space IPOs, for instance, but those are companies that still need to find out a way to get EBITDA positive, not even mentioning how to generate cash. And indeed, if you check the US listed space companies, out of 15 of those, 14 are burning cash like crazy, and the only one that's not burning cash is Iridium, that's been there for about 40 years now. So the way I think about it is actually to reshuffle the whole thing in a sense, and talking about an infrastructure play. That's how I like to see it in a sense, and I believe actually space is mostly a gig for infrastructure funds, and increasingly so. In the sense that if you think about it, it has lots of similarities with other industries which tend to be on the boring side of the spectrum, like shipping on Earth as a good example. And indeed, again, wrapping up a little bit around it, I believe that as much as for shipping, you could have applications that tend to be on the sci-fi side of the story, like deep sea mining, for instance. You have asteroid mining, but you still have to find a way to make it economic. No? And so that's where sure. I'll stop, but just to give you a little bit of an idea.
No, it's very important because you expect stellar returns when you invest in space tech companies. That makes sense, actually. And talking about space tech companies, we have Space Dots, that is your startup. And this is very important because we are having a flourishing moment of space tech startups on many different they're doing different things, both in the space and on Earth, and connecting the two things. Bianca, would you share something more about Space Dots with us, because you are very focusing on something linked to going to space in the right way?
Thank you, Emil, and it's really great to be here. Also, with Alessandro, we've had loads of chats last year, and what he's going to hear today is not what I pitched a couple of months ago. So this shows how much in a startup you not only have to change narrative, but also the market that you are going towards. So with Space Dots, our mission is to detect and attribute hidden threats in space. So what does that mean? I think most of us in the space industry, and probably not all of you, have heard about space weather and how harsh is the space environment, how much it affects everything from spacecraft designing to the operations to the mission planning, risk mitigation, the whole cycle. It's pretty much how weather affects, and has always affected aviation, but in a harsher way. So when we've gone through our own product definition, and again, looking at the market and where do you get the money from, there have been lots of humbling questions that we were asked by the investors, but also we had to ask ourselves, which means, okay, so what about this? What's really the way in which you're going to make money? What's the way in which is going to change the economy or the space economy in itself? So we had to go through those questions, and then we realized something that apparently nobody was realizing, which is also frightening in the same way. Radiation is one of the main aspects in space, which is really harsh to detect, attribute, and assess, especially when you are operating in space. But then, as we're moving towards a geopolitical situation where it's not just space for exploration or for peace, but it's becoming a warfare playground, radiation is also man-made. And so we started digging into these problems of the invisible threats in space, and we realized how much of those invisible environments may be used by a hostile actor to mimic it's just a space weather. This kind of processor glitched because it was a COTS component. We don't know what happened here, but our system went down, so we don't have communication to the ground, jamming, spoofing, all of that. So everything that has happened to aviation, it's happening in space. So this is what Space Dots is doing. It's really identifying and attributing these problems so that the operators in space can immediately understand what's happening and have an action to prevent or de-escalate a conflict.
Okay, and which is the stage of evolution of your startup so far?
So we're literally pre-seed. We just closed another round 2 months ago, pre-series A, which means I have to go and ask for money again in the next 2 months. So
okay, this is quite normal. This is quite normal for a startup.
That's where we are.
And what about the technology you're developing? I mean, can you tell us something more about it? I mean, why it is unique? You have any patents? Which is the approach you are using in order to solve the environmental space problems?
Yeah, so in terms, again, of the stage, we're pre-Series A, which we're going to be Series A next year. That doesn't mean much when we talk about technology. So the technology is a two-stage. The business model is a B2B SaaS. So, but it's really difficult to say B2B SaaS in space because it's not the same way it goes for a B2B SaaS somewhere else, because it's enabled.
Yeah, because my next question is, which is your typical customer?
Exactly. So the space operators, or I'll say the UK Space Command, the US Space Command, they don't just buy the way in which you are attributing something through a software. And also the way we have to identify and attribute these problems in space is not just through data that has been already collected by other operators, which they have to be willing to share, which in most cases it's so classified that we have to find a way of bypassing that, but also it's through our own hardware. So we have what we call data dots. They are payloads. Actually, we're flying with the Orbit. We will fly with the Orbit again next year. So there is a massive link there. But it's a
so you develop CubeSats in order. Okay.
And it's a very miniaturized packaging for sensing systems where we can detect all these different elements of the environment going there. which means we're filling gaps where data is not being collected before, so we don't duplicate our effort. But again, to build our own AI and machine learning and training, it's pointless to have any attribution system or algorithm if you don't have the right data, and data is very scarce.
Yeah.
Which means, again, if I'm selling this way of attributing hostile intent to you, the UK Space Command, which is one of the, let's say, the businesses that we're working with, they needs to be classified and it needs to be very well attributed. So
you sell the way to do things and they need to feed.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which doesn't make it as easy to find that, to close that customer cycle, because again, if you don't have the right data, you may attributing something incorrectly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you investors understanding very well this? No.
I think we have to, the investors that we got, first of all, are all from the States. So it's
And the company is based in UK?
in UK, yeah,
Okay.
we're based in London. So all the ones that led our funding rounds were from the States, and we got term sheet in 2 weeks by both of them, a pre-seed and seed.
Okay. And
Once
they never
from-
ask you to move the company to the US?
This is a fun story. So we were closing our pre-seed, and it was $1.5 million, and we got term sheet in the safe note at that point from a lead investor from the Silicon Valley. And by the way, I'm an engineer. I had no idea what it meant, VC or how to fund or the instant, no clue. So they asked us, okay, we're going to wire this money whenever. Are you a Delaware C Corp? And I looked blank at the screen, and I have no idea what you're asking me, and I was terrified that the deal now was gonna, fall through. And I went to search, and I said, I'm not, but I can be. So in 2 weeks, we had to flip the company from the UK to Delaware C Corp, and we signed the terms and everything on the 24th of December, 2022. Which was insane. So officially, our parent company is in the States, but our operations are in the UK.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Till we have the European Union Inc. That we are working on it, and maybe by the end of the year we're gonna have big news about that. So we'll be in Europe even more competitive with our partner in the world. Emma.
Yes.
Thank you to be here with us. And Emma, she is a scientist by training, but she's a writer, and she spread the word about the importance of the space tech in different fields. You run also an outlet called the Space Republic. And which is your vision? You have a wider vision of the sector, and which are the most important trends on the moment. And also, if you want to say something a little bit more about, because Gabriel said the Italian, in Italy we have a quite strong space tech industry. Is that true?
Well, okay, let's start from the first question.
Okay.
What's my vision of the space economy?
Yep.
First of all, how many of you follow the space economy? And thank you, I bet you do, okay. So this is a broad introduction to those of you who doesn't follow you, or are not particularly familiar with the concept of space economy. Again, another question. If I say space economy, what do you think of? Randomly, first word in your mind, come on. Okay, Starling, then. Somebody that is not in the space economy, he's not, you're out of this survey. Okay, first word, if I say space economy, what do you think? Mars. Again?
Crypto.
Crypto. Again? Bezos, okay. Pokemon, all right. So here is the problem with the space economy. I mean, it's not a problem, but let me just lead it for you as simple as possible. When we discuss about the concept of space economy, especially when it comes to the new space economy, what the people think, or what people not in the sector think, they think about Mars. They think about the moon. You think about rockets. You think about human missions, human travels. What is really generating profit at the moment in 2024, what is really driving the space economy, what we really mean in the technical sector for space economy, no matter what we write about it, no matter about the hype, is what is effectively the reach of what is the backbone of the space structure for the rest of the global economy. Said in other words, is that what is really generating profit is not the rocket, is not the satellite manufacturer. Forget about asteroids, forget about Mars, forget about the moon in this moment also. What is really generating profit is a mobile and media sector that uses the space infrastructure that have been usually built by governments and invested by taxpayers to generate a huge amount of profit. So to be really completely transparent with the public or with the investors or with the politicians or with the governments, we should say that space infrastructures paid by the taxpayers, supported by governments, are supporting $1 billion media and mobile phone economy. So if there is today an investor that doesn't know anything about space and asks me, Emma, where should I bet my money? I would say, well, you should really bet them in microchips to put them in phones, because that's what's really generating revenue. Something like 155 billions out of the 260 billions generated by the satellite economy. And already the satellite economy is completely excluded from the traditional space economy. NASA, ASI, DLR, NES, exclude them completely. 2/3 of the satellite economy is not from manufacturing satellites, which is the hard part, by the way, is from putting chips in your phones so that you can reach this hotel, or you can play game online, or you can find a doctor online, or you can use banking. So if you add to the chips...
It's a business-to-consumer business.
Absolutely. That's where the revenues are. If you add to the positioning, the GPS positioning, the apps, the gaming apps, the health apps, the banking apps, then we speak about numbers that are even bigger. So that's where the revenues are. And this is where there is a problem, a mismatch, a gray area between what we let the people or the public perceive about what is space and when the actual revenue is in 2024.
Okay.
At least.
Okay, but there are also money and investors that are investing in something innovative. I mean, that is not maybe producing a profit in the short term, but looks a bit far in the space, in time, and in space.
To my knowledge, the investment on the hardware of what we call the core of space, which is all the infrastructure, are in general harder to find than the investment in the applications, in the reach application. When it comes to investing for visionary project, of course, it's correct that they are. If the entire space infrastructure is at the moment completely, or almost completely financed by governments, if we want to see this infrastructure grow, it's unsustainable on the long term, so it makes sense that you want to try to find out private investments, like the gentleman on this panel before. However, when it comes to investing and betting in what is the core of the space sector, you really need to understand very accurately what you're investing in. Just to give you a very banal examples, rockets, if we exclude the elephant in the room, which is obviously SpaceX, is an incredibly risky business for obvious reasons. It's hard and they explode. So you need to know what you're setting into. That doesn't mean that there are no visionary investors and visionary CEO that actually are going to get serious about that. Do I believe that all the rocket companies that I see emerging every year in the space sector, they're going to make it, they're going to become the new SpaceX, or they're going to become the new Ariane? I would not suggest to become like Ariane in this moment, but anyhow, no, of course not. We're going to see consolidation, we're going to see all these processes that are natural in the financial system.
Okay, very good. I know that event managers are already killing me with their heights because we are running out of time, but I want to take a few minutes more, and I want to ask if you have one or two very quick questions for our panelists at the moment. If not, I thank you, all of you, and may the force be with you. We have a question. Yes. I'm coming.
Thank you. And I love your hat. I just filled the whole petition 2 days ago, and it was a deadline for Ewing. Yeah. My hat is still arriving, but I'm waiting for it. Yeah.
You compiled the form?
Everything. I did everything.
that's very
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So great panel, and I love the diversity of everyone. I'm also in space economy, so when I said Pokemon, I was saying Pokemon Go, the application that was tracking kids how to get Pokemon. So I'm curious because we're currently in Europe, but you were saying the classic story. I work a lot with Y Combinators, so when my startups who I advise need to get into YC, especially the European ones, the first question is, are you Delaware incorporated? If you're not, sorry, or do it. And my last batch, we had a founder who had to spend 80K on lawyers to figure out, because it's a very complicated product. So in terms of space economy, who's going to win? Europe, US? Do we work together? Do we work separately? How does this whole work? Because that...
Okay. Thank you. International competition in the space. Guys, very quick, because we are running out of time, but I want to share with the audience your opinion. Jaime, you go first, please.
Well, I don't have an internal experience like Bianca might have, so I can give you the external experience of where the numbers are. At this moment, the numbers are not even comparable between the US and Europe, and we are not even speaking about the same league. If we define winning, who is going to arrive first? The US comes from 60 years of profound investment, all the way through the verticalization of the space sector. They started to work on the privatization of the sector 25 years ago. We're not even the same league. This doesn't mean that Europe should not try to catch up and try to invest as far as possible. I believe the problems, there are several variables that should be analyzed when we discuss why Europe is not there yet. But I don't think we should give up. Let's put it that way.
There is that, but also in terms of like new space, what I think is that instead of competing with each other, I don't think anybody's going to be the next SpaceX, although many people think I'm going to be the next Elon Musk. I think collaboration between the old guard and the new guard is really what's going to win the new space economy. Again, it's true, like defining winning. Do we want to do something that actually change the course of humanity together, or we want to just create a monopoly and then compete with each other and cry and see who's going to be the next trillionaire? It's a very, very different perspective. For me, winning means I've done something in my life that has changed humanity for the better. If that means having to collaborate with my competitors, I'll do that.
Yeah. Also because putting tariff in the space is not like a Mel Brooks movie. Alessandro.
No, I wouldn't stop to US versus EU. Of course, the elephants in the room are in China, in India, etc., where
Japan.
Japan as well. The stats are a little bit more blurred. It's tougher to identify how much they are investing into what. But I believe that the EU must actually invest more and more in space for the simple reason that we lost the race in semiconductors, we lost the race in AI, we lost the race in cybersecurity. We are left with space. So that's probably what
we are good in nuclear fusion. Europe is leading the research in nuclear fusion.
Yeah, in the nuclear, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry? We're leading in food, of course. No, that's.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, food tech, fashion tech, and design tech, those kind of things. Okay, thank you very much, guys, and I